Hello everyone, Gav from Master974 here again today, and welcome to another Valve source code tutorial. This time around I'm doing part 2 of the shader authoring set of videos. This time around I'm going to be demonstrating how to add and test the parallax corrected Cubemap in the source engine. So this is based off of what Brian Charles has done. So there's a video where he showed default source reflections and how unrealistic they look, and then demonstrated what a parallax corrected Cubemap would look like. So effectively the reflections move based off of the player's position and uses a trigger or a bounding box and uses that where your position inside this bounding box with respect to where the Cubemap entity is to move reflections around. It sounds all complicated, and it kind of is. I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of it, but I'm going to demonstrate the sort of stuff you need to do to get this to work. So part 1 would have been how to get into position to actually compile shaders, which is something we're going to be doing in this video. And now we're going to actually add a new shader. So the first thing we need to do is I'm going to leave a link to the guide, because this guide is going to be pretty much copy and paste stuff into the right files and in the right places. But the first thing is a file called matrixinvert.h. So you just want to copy the contents into a .h file. So you can do this by loading up the everything.sln solution in your SP or MP src folder. And then once you load up everything, then just go new, create a .h file under C++, then copy and paste matrixinvert.h into this .h file and save it to src utils VBSP. And then you want to open up the cubemap.cpp file. And so in cubemap.cpp, you want to find side has cubemap and wasn't manually referenced. And underneath that, you want to add char star g_p parallax ob strs, and in the square brackets max map Cubemap samples. You can just copy and paste that from the tutorial. Then below that, you want to change the Cubemap_insert sample to have a char star p parallax ob str equals speech marks. After that, again, another copy paste kind of job. And inside the function at the top, add g_p parallax ob strs, blah 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 blah, copy and paste. Then you want to go to patch envmap for material and dependence and add in a const char asterisk p parallax blah 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 blah. Then in the function, scroll to where it says if p dependent material and add in a p parallax ob matrix at the end of it. And if you scroll down a bit more, you should see material patch info _t, p patch info, and in rounding brackets it should say 2, but you want to change it to say 6. And then another scroll down, you should see char p dependent patched material name, and in square brackets 1024. And yeah, there's just a bit you want to copy and paste underneath that. So parallax Cubemap matrix is what it starts with. And at the bottom, you should see create material patch. P material name, p patch material name, n patch count, blah 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 blah. You want to change the patch replace at the end to patch insert, and below just say matrolist.purge and delete elements, rounded brackets. Again, another copy and paste kind of job. And then you want to go to Cubemap_create text info and add an int Cubemap index to the end. Then scroll to where it says generate patched name, and in rounded brackets speech mark C info false blah 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 blah. Below that, copy and paste the bit where it says append origin info if this Cubemap has a parallax OBB. Then you should see, scrolling down a bit, if patch envmap for material and dependence blah 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 blah. Add an origin appended string at the end of that. Then if you scroll down a bit more, you go to Cubemap_fixup brush sides materials, and inside you should see p side arrow text info equals Cubemap_create text info, and you just want to add Cubemap ID to the end of that. And if you scroll down to Cubemap _ attach default Cubemap to specular sides, then you should see P side arrow text info equals Cubemap _ create text info again. And this time at the very end, you want to add Cubemap. So that is cubemap.cpp. Now you want to go to VBSP.h and find void Cubemap _ insert sample. And at the end of, after in size, add char asterisk p parallax ob str, sorry. And then above that, add extern char star g _ p parallax ob strs, and in square brackets max map Cubemap samples, and save that. Then we're going to go to map.cpp. So at the very top, add hashtag include, and in speech marks matrix invert.h, the file that we would have saved earlier. Then you want to go to the load entity callback function, and inside it find const char asterisk p side list str, and below that add char asterisk p parallax ob str equals value for key, that line, copy and paste that in. Then find Cubemap _ insert sample, mapend arrow origin, that line just add p parallax ob str at the end of that. Then below the parent if statement that you'd be in at that point, you just want to copy and paste this lengthy bit of code, but essentially it's just the parallax ob entity stuff. So yeah, just copy and paste that where I paste it into in the video. Then you want to scroll down to load map file function and find if two left brackets eResult equals chunk file _ OK, and that line, and above it you just want to copy and paste another bit of code from the guide, so to fill out the parallax ob matrix array and then remove the parallax ob entities. So once you've copied and pasted all this stuff, save everything and compile the project. It should build without any problems, and you should get a VBSP.exe application in the bin folder. So this would be SP game bin, I think it is. And then you should get, your VViz, your VRAD, your VBSP.exe in that folder. You're going to want to use that later. So my bit of advice for now would be to say, rename VSP, so rename it to VBSP-mod, for instance. Then copy and paste that into your Source SDK based 2013 single player or multiplayer bin folder. So you don't want to overwrite the already existing VBSP.exe in the Source SDK 2013 bin folder, basically. But basically call it the mod, and then we'll deal with that later. So now we get on to the shader editing. So basically the guide says it's going to be, using the lightmapped generic shader and go from there. So what we want to do is go to lightmapped generic _ dx9 _ helper.h, and at the following lines at the end of lightmap generic _ dx9 _ vars _ t. So basically just copy and paste the stuff that I show in the video. Then in lightmap generic _ dx9.cpp, you want to go to where it says begin versus shader and just change it to SDK _ lightmap generic, help for SDK _ lightmap generic, because we're changing the lightmap generic shader to be something new, essentially. So where it says begin shader params near the end after shader param outline end 1, copy and paste the stuff that I show you. Then where it says void setup vars lightmap generic _ dx9 _ vars _ t and info, at the end of that after info.m _ n outline end 1 line, just add in the Parallax Cubemap stuff from the guide. Then in lightmap generic _ dx9 _ helper.cpp, with the hashtag include files at the top, you want to change them to have SDK _. So STK underscore lightmap generic underscore ps20.inc, and same for underscore vs20 and underscore ps20b. Now you want to go to where it says declare static vertex shader lightmap generic underscore vs20 and add the STK underscore in this case. Now you want to find all of those cases and just add STK underscore. So it should be easy. You can find where there's error messages, where the scroll bar is on the right hand side of the file. And it should just be lightmap generic underscore vs20 or ps20b or ps20. Just add in STK underscore in every case. There's going to be a block of code that is going to produce an error where it's about using the flashlight or whatever. I would say comment that out, because trust me, I've gone through the effort of actually getting that to work and it doesn't fix any of the problems that I'm going to get into later on. So don't worry about it, just comment that bit out. And so once you've done with that, then you want to go to void init params lightmap generic underscore dx9, and near the top you should see after init float param info.m underscore n outline alpha, just add in the line of code, block of code from the tutorial about the Parallax Cubemaps. Then go to void draw lightmap generic underscore dx9 underscore internal, and after the line ball has normal map alpha env map mask, just add in the Parallax Cubemap line as shown in the guide and the video. Then further down in the method, you should see if g underscore p hardware config arrow supports pixel shaders underscore 2 underscore b. Before the line set static pixel shader STK lightmap generic ps20b, you want to add in the Parallax correct code. Then right before set static pixel shader STK underscore lightmap generic ps20, add in the set underscore static pixel shader combo Parallax correct 0 as shown in the guide, which basically means it doesn't work if you don't have a good enough graphics card, for example. So now you want to go to where it says p context data arrow m underscore semi static cmds out.end, and right before that add in the Cubemap stuff. So if it has parallax correction, then it goes through all of the stuff that you want it to go through. And that should be everything from the C++ side of things done. What I would advise you to do as well is add all of these files into the shader HL2 or shader episodic project, because part of what we need to do is generate a game shader dx9.dll file, which can then mean you can use the shaders in your mod. So I would advise you that you add these files to the project, which if you watch the video, I add them as I go along and then make the necessary changes. So that should be everything there. I'd say as well, right at the very end of one of these files, I believe it's the one that we're currently in, you basically get an error where it says something about the flashlight or something. So basically there's a bit that you can comment out. I'll show it in the video so you know what I'm talking about. There's a bit that you can just comment out because it looks like it's doing the same thing. So it goes into an if statement, but it does the same bit of code as it does without the if statement, if that makes sense. So you can just comment that if statement out. That throws up an error when you try to build the solution. So you can get rid of that. So there's two bits that you can get rid of because they throw up errors, and it's just not worth getting into trying to get them to work. Okay, so now you're going to get into the shader files. So you want to go to lightmap generic underscore ps2 underscore 3 underscore x.h. And in this file underneath const float for g underscore shadow tweaks, you want to add in the Parallax Cubemap stuff, so hashtag if Parallax corrects and all of that. Then if you go down a bit more, inside of if b Cubemap, then in the line where it says Fresnel equals Fresnel asterisk g underscore 1 minus, well, I know it's Fresnel, but you know, it says Fresnel. Just copy and paste in the Parallax correction stuff there. And then that is all we need to do in that file. So make sure you save that. then you want to actually go to your material system std shaders directory and find lightmap generic underscore ps2x.fxc and then underscore ps11 and underscore vs20. And you want to copy and paste these files and add the SDK underscore prefix. So then you should have SDK underscore lightmap generic underscore ps2x.fxc, SDK underscore lightmap generic underscore ps11, and SDK underscore lightmap generic underscore vs20. So in the underscore ps2x.fxc, then underneath static flashlight 0, that line, just add in the static parallax correct line as shown. And then at the very end, after skip detail blend mode and bump map does not equal 0, then you want to add in the parallax correct stuff there. So now you're in a position to compile the shaders. Now, to do this, what you want to do is open up the std shader underscore dx9 underscore 20b text file, and you actually want to add in SDK underscore lightmap generic underscore ps2x.fxc, SDK underscore lightmap generic underscore ps11.fxc, and SDK underscore lightmap generic underscore vs20.fxc. And what's going to happen is what you want to do is, in my case, go into the command prompt, change the directory to where your std shaders folder is. So in my case, it's on an external drive. So you can go, for instance, s : to change it to the S drive, then cd to change directory, copy and paste from File Explorer the directory where you're at, where the source code and that is in this case, and then just type in build HL2 shaders. And what this should do is it should go through, and if you follow part 1, then you should see what happens, and it basically builds and compiles the shaders. Now, even on my system, I have an Intel Core i7-7700 processor, 16GB of RAM, though I only pass 12GB through to the virtual machine that I was using in this case. I don't think having an RTX 2080 super affects things, but even for me, it takes about an hour to compile these shaders, so it takes a while, so be prepared to sit around for a bit. It goes through millions of combinations, maybe even billions. But once it's completed, then you should have a shaders folder appear, and inside shaders you should see an FXC folder, and inside there you should see the actual SDK underscore lightmap generic shaders. So you want to copy this shaders folder into your actual mod folder. So then it's, say, mod HL2, and then paste in shaders and then go FXC, and then you should see it there. And in my case, I actually used the source test in Source SDK based 2013 single player to actually test this with that Hammer editor. So then you can go, say, Source SDK based 2013 single player, shader test or source test, whatever it's called, source test I think it is, then paste in the shaders folder there. Then what you want to do is go into your mod HL2 or mod episodic folder under your SP or MP game folder, and then in the bin folder there where you get your client and server DLL, you should see a game shader DX9 DLL as well. If you've done what I've suggested and added these files as you went along to your project, and then you should be able to copy and paste that into the bin folder inside of source test in this case, and then that means you can use these shaders. So hopefully you've already copied and pasted the modified VBSP.exe that I mentioned earlier into the Source SDK 2013 bin folder. So not source test bin, but just the actual Source SDK base bin folder. And so you want to load up Hammer Editor at this point, go into source test, and underneath options, then you want to go to where it says build programs and VBSP option, and change it to the VBSP mod that you would have compiled and created. And at this point, I'll plug in a couple of applications that you can use to make sure this works properly. So number one would be VTF Edit. This way you can open up VTF and VMT files and edit them, even though you can do it with something like Notepad. I just like the way it works. Something called GCFscape, so you can open up .vpk files and use that to get .vmt files from textures that you want to actually change. And also Packrat, which is a way of opening up .bsp files and deleting textures, which is basically the failed cube maps, because for some reason the cube maps don't build properly. So I'll resort to a Valve Hammer tutorial I would have done where you can basically delete cube maps that don't build properly out of your map and then go through a process to properly build them. But essentially what you want to do is have a map. So in Brian's video, he has a download link to essentially the VBSP.exe and a test map that you can use to, see this in action. And so what I'm using is the map in this case. I keep a note of what the name of the tile floor is. I go into the actual .vpk file in the HL2 folder of Source SDK Base 2013 single player, and then extract that into my source test materials and tile in this case. Rename the .vmt file because it might cause a conflict and then crash the Hammer editor, so make sure you actually rename it. And quite simply at the top where it says lightmap generic, you just want to add in SDK_lightmap generic and save it. And then you should be able to go into the Hammer editor after you restart it if you've got it open. And then you should be able to select SDK_shaders. Now it doesn't look like it works properly. It's probably something to do with the Hammer editor not understanding the shader. But oh wait, I forgot an important step as well. Oops. In the guide there's a .fgd file. So essentially what you can do is just copy and paste the code and into Notepad. Then go save as all files and save it as parallaxcubes.fgd. I don't save it like that, but then you want to go to the Source SDK Base 2013 bin folder and save it in there. Then in the Hammer editor, under options, one of the first windows you see, you should be able to add .fgd files, and you want to add that in, because what it's going to do is change the cube map and add in a new brush-based entity called Parallax ob. And so in this case, the cube map is going to refer to a trigger which is tied to the Parallax ob entity, and the Parallax ob entity has to have a name. So that's an important step that I forgot to mention. So you need to add that in. And then on top of adding in the modified .vmt file to allow us to use this new shader, then you can build the map essentially. And this is where Packrat comes into effect. You need JavaScript, so you need the Java runtime environment. I'll leave a link to download that if you want to use Packrat, but essentially all you need to do is navigate to where the map is compiled to. So in this case it would be the Source SDK Base 2013 single player, source test maps, parallax test, whatever it's called. Then you want to open that up, delete all of the textures out, save the map, and then actually load up the map from within the game engine. So I demonstrate how I go about doing it. And then you would just want to go through the steps that I outline. So mat specular 0, mat HDR level 0, then build cube maps, mat HDR level 2, build cube maps again, mat underscore specular 1, restart. And with all that being said and done, you should see that the cube maps have built properly. And they move based off of the player position, and it looks all good in the hood. Now the problem is, I've referenced this in part 1 and part 2 of the shader authoring videos, that this looks like you have matte Fulbright on. And what I mean by that is, it doesn't matter what light sources you have, the texture with the SDK_lightmap generic shader looks like it's pure white light on it all the time. So it doesn't matter what light you have in your scene, any texture that uses this new shader is just going to show up bright white. So that's obviously a problem with the actual shader source, and I've done everything I could to make sure it works in any capacity. It doesn't. I think even in the actual video that Brian shows, he says it's an unlit shader, even though we're modifying the light map generic shader. So unfortunately, you can't really use it and make it look good, because it's going to look like you have solid white light incident on it at all times. So that's a downside to this shader, but then you have reflections that move based off of the player. So anyway, that's a downside, I would argue, of this tutorial. I think I'll do a follow-up to this where you can use the Funk Reflective Glass essentially as a reflective floor and then use that. So that is something that you can do to replace this tutorial. So I know I've rambled on quite a bit. There is a lot of stuff to do. There's a lot of stuff to cover, but essentially it's follow the guide, copy and paste stuff into the right places. Make sure you follow part 1 to make sure that you get everything set up properly to actually compile shaders in the first place if you're having problems. And do as I say in this video, add stuff to projects as you go along if you need to make sure that everything is done to standard, it's done properly, and then it works with very little problems, and then you can actually test this for yourself. And I'm going to end the video here now, so thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you found this helpful. Please let me know what you think, and I'll see you for the next probably hammer tutorial where I'm going to go over the Funk Reflective Glass idea that I would have just mentioned. So take care out there, peace out, and see you next time.